Immersed Robot.
Hello everyone, welcome to Immersed Robot. So in this video I wanted to take a look at how Elite Dangerous Odyssey is performing on my system, and you can see the full specs of my system in the description to this video, but it's a RTX 3080, Ryzen 5 5600X CPU and 32GB of DDR4 RAM, just for your reference here. Now the footage that I'm showing here, majority of it will be after the update, so I'm recording this on May the 27th, and Update 1 for Elite Dangerous Odyssey did drop earlier on today, so most of the footage that you'll see here is from that, although I will do a little bit of side-by-side comparison with footage from which I recorded before the update, but you'll see that it's pretty close in all honesty, and the reason for that is that Frontier have not really tackled any performance optimisations within this Update 1, although they have included extra telemetry so that they can sort of analyse some more data from users and hopefully pin down some of the performance problems that people are having in the game. So all I'm showing here really is my experience on my particular system, and there are inconsistencies in terms of the kinds of experience that many people are getting in this game, and that's probably one of the most frustrating things about it really. People are getting different experiences in terms of performance, and there doesn't seem to be too much of a pattern with that. So I'll show you some of the performance that I'm getting on my system, and this is all in VR as well. I want to make that clear. So everything that I'm showing here, all the footage was recorded in VR. And you can see at the bottom of the screen I've got that overlay which will show frames per second and frame timings and things like that, so you've got that on screen at all times as well, just for your reference. I will be running this game on the VR medium graphical preset as well during this, so it's really just to give a baseline because I have custom graphical settings usually, but I wanted to just strip it back to a preset just so we can see some comparison here as well, and just to give a clear indicator of the kind of experience that I'm getting. And at the end of this video, as I say, I will show a little bit of side-by-side comparison with before the update. Not that that's too valuable at the moment because performance is very similar, although there are a few little differences in terms of CPU usage, it looks like. But then at the end of the video as well, I wanted to show you a sort of an anomaly that I get every now and again. It's probably happened 4 or 5 times since playing Elite Dangerous Odyssey, and it's just a bit of an anomaly that I seem to get where the performance will really drop right down. I'm getting very low frames per second, and I did manage to catch that in some footage that I recorded earlier this week, so I'll just show you that just to see if anybody gets a similar kind of experience as well, and I'll also give my overall general thoughts on performance with this game at the end of the video too. So today after the update I checked it out and I started in the cockpit, and generally what's happening here is we're running at 45 frames per second, trying to get up to that 90 FPS because my index is running at 90 Hz, but it seems to be reprojecting in the cockpit, and then once I get out you can see it's trying to jump up to those 90 FPS native, but it doesn't quite get there. And you can see here on the frame timings the GPU isn't doing too badly here, but it's more on the CPU side in my particular system that is struggling on these outside sections. But honestly it varies quite a lot between these two things as well. Sometimes you'll find the GPU really spikes and the CPU's fine, and then you'll get the opposite occurring as well at various times. So I just had a quick wander around this station, which is Brunel Hub in Cios, just to get some clear idea on how it was running, and overall it was a little bit jumpy through most of this. It's a busy area, I understand that, but I'm getting these sort of clear patterns on both the GPU and the CPU side. It's like these regular dips in performance, so there's something specific causing that, and then it will sort of drop back down again and things will be fine. It's difficult to pin down when it's sort of jumping up. It seems to be more or less random in these areas. So I went back down to the hangar, and you can see that we're running up at to 90 FPS here again. It seems to do quite well in this area actually. I'm running at 90 frames per second, and then I went back into my ship, back into the cockpit, and we were back in true VR. That of course, all the on-foot sections that I'm showing here are projected on a 2D screen, which is the way this game works at the moment. So back in the cockpit you can see that I'm down to those 45 FPS again for a majority of the time. I go into the system map and it goes back up to 90, but then generally when you're in the cockpit it's running at 45 FPS. And just very quickly for anybody that doesn't know this, I'm running the index at 90 Hz, and the ideal for that is obviously to run the game at 90 frames per second. Now you can see the GPU frame timings here. They are above 11 milliseconds, which is what it needs to be, 11 milliseconds or lower, to maintain 90 frames per second in VR. If it can't maintain those 11 milliseconds, then it will reproject down to 45 frames per second. It will cut those in half, reprojecting the frames so you get a stable level of performance, even though it can't quite maintain those native 90 frames per second. It's generally used so that you can get a stable experience, whether it's 90 frames per second or 45 frames per second. So it's better to have those two locked in place rather than jumping between 90 and 78, 85, those kinds of things. That's when you'll notice far more stuttering. So because of that, it can't quite maintain 90 frames per second, so it locks itself down to 45. Now, Elite Dangerous Horizons was running better than this. I can say that categorically. It was running a lot better than this, and you can see when we go out of this station, it's trying to get those frame timings below 11 milliseconds, but it keeps going up. That's why we're not getting a consistent 90 or a consistent 45. And then once we're out a little bit further away from the station, it almost maintains those 90 frames per second as well, which is the ideal. But in terms of frame timings, I'm noticing quite a big increase compared to Horizons. So I went down to a planet surface, and performance was a little bit variable again. I was getting 90 frames per second through part of this descent, and then it went down to 45 FPS. Once landed, we were still on this 45 frames per second again, so I went out in the SRV, and again, pretty much constant reprojection in these areas too, which isn't a bad way of playing. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just quite a big difference compared to how Horizons was performing. And I understand that, you know, if with any increase in graphical fidelity, whether we see it or not, then there will be a performance hit with that. I understand that, and I'll get onto that a little bit later on as well. So when I got to this settlement, I decided to explore it a little bit on foot, and you can see that the CPU is really sort of spiking here as I go around this settlement, and frame timings are not great. The frame rate is not great either. It's sort of jumping about a little bit, and it seems to be down to the CPU in this particular case. So just some quick side-by-side comparisons here. I did record pretty much the same journey before the update as I did just after the update, so we can get some direct comparisons. And again, Frontier weren't really attacking the performance optimisations in this particular update, so it's not radically different, and that's to be expected. Although I will say that it does seem like the CPU overall, as I look through this entire video of the side-by-side, it looks like the CPU is generally dealing with things a little bit better than it was before the update, but it's not a huge difference, and really the experience was pretty much identical in terms of the headset and what you're experiencing from moment to moment, both before and after the update. So there's not too much to say on this, but hopefully this update will allow them to pin down some of these performance issues, and hopefully we'll receive another update at some point in the next couple of weeks to correct some of these things as well. Okay, and I did want to show this. This seems to be a bit of an anomaly on my system, or perhaps other people have experienced it as well, but it seems to happen just sporadically since the Odyssey update. And what it is I'll get a significant drop in frame rate, and you can see as I walk around this station it happening, but it has happened both when I've been playing on foot, but also when I've been in the cockpit as well, docked at stations. And you can see here it's dropping down to frame rate of like 22 frames per second, and the frame timings are ridiculous. The GPU usage has gone right up for some reason, and I don't know what's causing it. I'm in the same section as I've played through numerous times before, and it didn't behave like this. But then, like I say, this has happened probably 4 or 5 times in all the times that I've been playing Odyssey these past couple of weeks, and it's just very frustrating. I'm not sure what causes it or anything like that. I know that some people are saying that there's a culling issue where objects are not being removed if they're out of line of sight and things like that, and that can impact performance. I don't know if that's this, because you would think that would be a bit more of a consistent problem where I'm experiencing it all the time or not at all, and this just seems to happen sporadically, and I can't really stop it from happening until I go out of my game and then go back in, and then things will be much better then. It's a strange thing, but I just wanted to mention it just to see if anybody else has had a similar thing occur at all. And finally, just very quickly, I just wanted to give a few of my overall thoughts on this. I mean, the launch, I think it's safe to say, has not been great for Odyssey, and Frontier have had quite a lot of criticism regarding this, people calling it a beta, and they had to get Odyssey out before their financial year ended, otherwise it would impact their financial year status, and these kinds of things. I'm not too sure what to make of all that, but it's safe to say that the launch hasn't gone smoothly at all, and the more I've gone into it, the more frustrated I've become actually with it. And there was a time earlier this week where I was just thinking, I'm not going to play it at all. I'm going to just leave it for a few weeks or even a month or so and just see, and then come back to it and see what happens then. But I've decided to persevere a little bit with it. Now, in terms of like performance that I'm showing here and how it compares quite badly when comparing it to Horizon, which is probably a little bit unfair, but that's really the only comparison I've got at the moment. And I understand that with a major update like this, where they are saying that the graphical fidelity has been increased, then you're going to get a performance hit, and it will require, as the years go on, this game improves over the years, it will require more powerful machines. But when you're not really seeing too much of a graphical increase overall, at least I'm not, it's a frustrating experience when you're noticing such a radical drop in performance with this. Now, I know that people can post these images of the game looking incredible, and I understand that. I don't doubt that that's true as well, but in my experience, from what I've played so far, the game in space and on planets doesn't look that much better than it did before, and yet I'm noticing quite a big difference in performance. So that's where the frustrations come from really, and it's just really where people are getting inconsistent performance issues as well throughout this. I think that causes further frustrations with all of this stuff. But let's end on a positive, because I'm hopeful that this update will at least allow Frontier to pin down the issues of what is causing these performance inconsistencies, these performance problems, and hopefully then we'll get an update and some of these things will be resolved. And that's the main thing for me, because even in space, when it's showing 90 frames per second for the most part, I'm still getting some of these drops and things. It's just, I'm probably rambling on a bit too much. It's more the frustrations of this than anything else, and I'm still optimistic overall on this. I think Frontier will deliver in the end, but then again, I can understand the frustration from the community, because this is not what they were promised. They were promised a game which they could play from launch, and it's difficult in some instances to really get the experience that a lot of people want. Aside from performance, people have been critical of the UI. Now, I am a little bit more forgiving of the UI, but can certainly understand. I understand that when people can't do the tasks which they do on a regular basis quite so quickly anymore, and it takes more steps, and it can just, again, another frustration really with this kind of stuff. But I think Frontier have also addressed that they are going to look into that side of things as well. So again, these are all encouraging. I'm trying to end on a positive. We'll just see how it goes. So hopefully this video can give you some idea of how my system is performing with Elite Dangerous Odyssey at the moment, just after update 1, which dropped this morning. And yeah, hopefully things will just get better from this point on. But that's pretty much it. Before I go this time, I do just want to thank the person that has supported me on Patreon, my first Patreon supporter. I'm very grateful to that. I don't know if you want me to mention your name or not, so I won't, just in case, but it's very much appreciated, of course. And if anybody else wants to support this channel on Patreon, then there is a link in the description to this video. I don't really mention it too much on videos, but the link is always there in the descriptions anyway. If you want to support me in that way, that would be, of course, appreciated. Another way to support me is to pick up my science fiction novel, The Memory Engine. It's all about virtual reality, so it might be of interest to some people that watch this channel. In fact, there'll probably be an advert at the end of this video for it as well, so you can find links to that in various formats in the description to this video as well. But that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. I hope this video hasn't been too rambly. I tried to keep it as concise as possible, but there's a lot to say about this subject at the moment, so yeah, I'll try to keep things a little bit more concise in future. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Please consider picking up my science fiction virtual reality focused novel, The Memory Engine, a light-hearted tongue-in-cheek adventure through the metaverse, available on Amazon Kindle, paperback, and as an Audible audiobook. Links in the description to this video.